You know, things have gotten bad during the holiday season when Cthulhu shows up. And as a good guy, no less. We're taking a quick peek at Cthulhu Saves Christmas. Cthulhu Saves Christmas is a turn-based RPG by Z-Boyd Digital Entertainment LLC, or Z-Boyd Games. Over the years, they've been releasing a multitude of RPGs heavily inspired by 8-bit RPG classics, like the original Dragon's Quest or Final Fantasy games. For the most part, it seems that their games are parodies of their inspirations, with Cthulhu Saves the World putting a twist on the normal narrative formula of the genre. They also did some work with Penny Arcade's On the Rain-Slick Precipice of Darkness series, developing Episode 3 and 4 after Hothead Games did Episode 1 and 2, and continuing to bring its ridiculous concepts to life. Needless to say, they know their way around a turn-based RPG. I've never really been a huge fan of these types of games, as there are quite a lot of them as of anymore, and they tend to become tedious rather quickly. Many of them use the same basic combat systems and rely on grinding levels for stats in order to pace out gameplay, and that's just not all that enjoyable to me. It takes more than just the basics to get my attention toward a turn-based RPG these days, and Cthulhu Saves Christmas has a setup that did enough to pique my interest. The story of Cthulhu Saves Christmas, of course, involves the Lovecraftian elder god Cthulhu saving Christmas. Now, why would old Squidface do this? Well, it's because that's the story the developers wrote, so he doesn't have much of a choice. The game is written in a joking way, where it takes every ample opportunity to make a pun as well as break the fourth wall. The characters very much know that they are in a video game and comment on it often. They also like to argue with the narrator and developers about the game, its engine limitations, and plot cliches. It seems a group of spoilsports called the League of Christmas Evil have kidnapped Santa Claus with the goal of controlling the holiday for themselves, or something along those lines. They've begun handing out anti-presents, gifts that give the exact opposite of what the receiver wants, and Cthulhu just so happened to open one which stripped him of his powers. Traveling to the mortal world, he comes across Santa's granddaughter, Crystal, who explains that saving the jolly old elf would put him permanently on the nice list and allow Santa to restore his powers. Without Santa, the world is kind of broken anyway, as it's stuck on a repeating loop of Christmas Eve for all eternity until the League of Christmas Evil are defeated. Cthulhu and Crystal aren't totally alone, though. As the game goes on, a few other members of their party will appear, although they may not be totally accurate to their legends. The chicken-obsessed Baba Yaga from Slavic folklore makes an appearance as a young-looking child with a chicken on her head. Both her and her chicken are interesting enough characters, as while they aren't necessarily traditional bad guys like Cthulhu, they aren't as squeaky clean as Crystal and don't mind making trouble. Germany's Bell Snickle also joins the group, rounding out the party's 4 members and giving some nice dynamics to conversations. The game's broken up into 2 main areas. Levels where you fight monsters and take on one of the members of the League of Christmas Evil, and a sort of in-between area called Christmas Land. Even though every day is Christmas Eve, there is still a day system during Christmas Land sections, where players can explore the town and interact with the locals, usually for some sort of reward. This is where a lot of the game's narration takes place, and I found a lot of it to be my kind of humor. The fourth wall breaks can kind of get tiring, but you can only do one thing each day, a fact that comes up more than once, and only a few days in between levels. You aren't really in Christmas Land long enough for conversations to become annoying, and thankfully they don't come off as long-winded, and the rewards of equipment or items to use in battle are generally worth it. Something to keep in mind here is how many times you go to the same place or hang out with the same person. Locations have their own mini-stories that play out over time by repeatedly visiting them over and over again, with rewards becoming more and more interesting the farther you go. Spending time with party members not only gives you equipment or item rewards, but can also help with your, let's see if I can say this right, relationships. Relationships? Relationships? I don't know, it's an eldritch pun for relationships. Cthulhu's relationship with other party members can have some sort of effect on them in battles, so if you happen to like any of them, be sure to spend some time with them when you can. I personally enjoyed hanging out with Baba Yaga as she tried to fuse her house with a chicken to make the world's first walking hut. It's a nice callback to the character's folklore while also fitting the game's absurd tone. While Cthulhu Saves Christmas is very much a classic turn-based RPG with all the stats and alignments and such, the battle system is a little bit unique, or unique is so far in the way that I haven't seen any other game do it exactly how it does. All the main things a character can do are split up into abilities and appear in 2 rows of 4. The top row consists of abilities that you can set for a character manually, so they'll always have them, while the first 3 in the bottom row are randomized, unselected abilities, with the 4th being a recharge. Every time an ability is used, its charge is used up, unless specified differently. The only way to use it again is to recharge, which takes a turn, and recharging rerolls when abilities are in the randomized slots. This means characters can't just spam the same attacks over and over again unless that ability says it's reusable, and only a select few do by default. Each party member has their own specialties as well. Cthulhu's main quirk is his ability to drive enemies insane. Insanity causes what alignments, such as fire or ice, that an enemy is weak to flip, as well as making them take more general damage and even more extra damage from special kinds of attacks. You do have to be careful though, since insane enemies will also do a little bit more damage, so it's all about weighing out the risk. Crystal's generally the white mage of the group and doesn't do anything all that interesting herself, but Baba's powers mostly revolve around her chicken. Specific abilities will raise her chicken level and make her chicken-related abilities even more potent, so charging it up is ideal. Belsnickel, on the other hand, has a lot of buff and debuff abilities, with many of his attacks being connected to his health, like doing more damage if he's at max or close to death. Every time one of your characters takes a turn, they'll fill another section of their hyper bar, which, when full, will make whatever ability you use for that turn even more effective. Sometimes it can take a single target attack and make it affect all enemies on a row or in the entire battle, or even apply a buff to the entire party opposed to just one character. There's a good amount of enemies to fight as well, with everything from purple alien cats to the Mwahaha Maw. Mwahaha Maw, Mwahaha Maw, Mwahaha Maw, Mwahaha Maw, Mwahaha Maw. Ha! It's not that hard to say 5 times fast. While the mechanics aren't super different from the traditional way these kinds of games play out, with their characters having attacking, defending, and limited magical options, it is enough to put at least a little bit of strategy into combat that took a bit of getting used to in order to get the most out of it. There are also unite abilities where 2 characters will work together to do a more powerful ability. These charge over time throughout a battle and become more and more effective the more charge they have, but they can really only be used once per fight. Unfortunately, once you get yourself some solid abilities, it can be easy to fall into a battle routine of using the same ones at the same time in the same way for each fight. Generally, I found battles to be rather easy as long as I was paying attention and keeping my party's health up and prioritizing enemies that could heal or buff each other. It's even possible to charm them and get them to attack each other or heal you if you could pull it off. The way this game handles encounters, though, is a bit different from normal games like this as well. These kinds of games almost always have endless random encounters where you could be thrown into a fight at any time without warning while just walking around an area. But not here. Every time you enter a level, there's a specified number of encounters displayed on the screen, as well as a bar that'll fill up over time to let you know when one will happen. Players can also manually initiate an encounter through the game's pause menu, and every successful victory lowers the encounter number. Once that number hits 0, there'll be no more encounters unless you start one yourself. This means that players can constantly start fights as soon as the level begins and go through all of them even before taking a step if they want to. I really liked this system, as random encounters can quickly become tiring, and not only does this method give you more control over it, it also allows you to save at any time between fights in the pause menu if you come across one that happens to be kicking your butt. Most importantly though, it helps with grinding experience points. I've always hated grinding in RPGs, as it's rather tedious to wander around looking for enemies worth fighting, let alone having to go through the fights themselves. This way, if you come across a boss that's killing you over and over again, you don't have to go anywhere. All you gotta do is start some battles and level up a few times right from where you are. I did notice the lack of a flee or run option in battles though. Once a fight starts, there's no way out of it till it's over, be that the taste of victory or defeat. Fights can be replayed if you happen to lose, but there's no way to get out of one outside of losing and then going back to the main menu. It's kind of annoying, but not too bad overall, since I personally didn't have too much trouble as long as I did all the required fights to get enough experience points before going up against the boss. Something the game does really well, though, is its art and music. While the 16-bit art style has been done many times before, and will be done many times again, I can't help but say that this game does it well. Somehow, the twist of Christmas decorations and eldritch horrors mix rather well, and the whole game is about as colorful and detailed as you can get for this sort of art design. Enemies are kind of stock standard monsters that could really fit any kind of RPG like this, which is a bit of a shame, but at least environments are lively enough, even the ones full of skeletons. Music, on the other hand, is something else entirely. I really didn't expect to enjoy it as much as I did. There's some great takes on traditional Christmas music in here, as well as a good bit of non-Christmas stuff. The soundtrack is by Joshua Queen, and only a few of the tracks would fall into what I would call generic. The variations of battle music stood out to me especially, along with some of the more creepy and atmospheric tracks. I definitely recommend giving it a listen, even if the rest of the game doesn't interest you much. Overall, Cthulhu Saves Christmas is a solid turn-based RPG and a solid Christmas game at that. Most holiday games are quickly made shovelware, but not this one. It's somewhat of a prequel to Cthulhu Saves the World, and has me interested enough in the universe that Zeboyd has created that I may just check that game out in my spare time. I can't say it's the best RPG I've ever played, as it does have its own problems. Even with its battle system, it wasn't before all that long that I got really tired of it. The game's writing usually meshes well with my own taste in comedy, but a few times it went on for a bit too long or ended up just being disappointing. There was one conversation where a character threatened to crash the game unless I returned to the soup kitchen in Christmasland the next day, only for me to not do that in the game, not crash. I was really hoping there would be some kind of payoff to this setup, but there just wasn't anything at all. Things just went on as usual. That's not to say that the game didn't break on me. There was one part where during a conversation, the same dialogue box came up twice in a row, but with how the game's written, I can't be sure if that was on purpose or not. What wasn't on purpose was the one time during a battle where the game thought all of the enemies were destroyed, even though they weren't, and would advance the turn. It just stayed there, not letting me do anything but force it to close and load up whatever the last save was. Part of what made the game feel as easy as it does is that your party's health is fully restored for every battle, or at least on the difficulty I was playing on. Choosing a higher difficulty could have made for more of a challenge, but that would probably just lead to more grinding in the long run. For what it is, Cthulhu Saves Christmas is a fun little RPG that's actually kind of short for RPG standards. Then again, RPG standards is sometimes something like 15 to 20 hours, where the gameplay only starts getting good 7 hours in, so take that with a grain of salt. I personally connected with the game's narrative and always enjoyed its conversations with the Lord of Madness interacting with the jolly mortals of Christmasland. If you happen to enjoy turn-based RPGs and are looking for something cute and fun for the holidays, then you can't go wrong with Cthulhu Saves Christmas. It's not all that big nor in-depth, but it's a nice gift to keep you entertained while ignoring how over-commercialized everything in the holiday season has become. Thanks for watching. Please let me know what you think of the game or this video in the comment section. I'm Mega Pie Man, and I'll talk to you guys later. Want to see more of my stuff? Click on the video on the left for Terminator Resistance, an FPS in the future war setting of the Terminator film franchise. Or click on the video on the right to hunt Russian stereotypes in Siberia with Sniper Ghost Warrior contracts.